I was walking through the Crown and Bridge department the other day, and I walked by one of the QC people who's a friend of mine, and I saw a couple of impressions sitting on her desk, and I wanted to share them with you. It's a tale of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the good. This is an impression from a doctor who practices in California, and it's a simultaneous impression where both materials are squirted in at the same time as opposed to taken separately, and you can tell because of how nicely they blend. This is in that clinician's choice quad tray extreme that I like so much because it's nice and stiff, and you can see a nice margin all the way around there. You can tell this is a two-chord impression technique because of the fact that we have impression material beyond the margin all the way around. A little thin on the mesial right there, but you can tell obviously by all this stone here, this has already been poured. And so that might have just torn off when that was actually poured. In fact, there's a lot of material present considering that this has already been poured and separated and this crown's already been made and shipped back to the doctor. So just a gorgeous impression. You can see, I'm not even holding it up to the light, but you can see all the contact here between the unprepped teeth, so these thin areas here where you know the patient was in maximum intercuspation. I don't know, I guess I would have used a little more of the light body material, but it doesn't really matter on these other teeth. I mean, it's fine. I would have squirted a little more, but then again, I get my impression material for free, so I tend to dispense it like I was still in dental school, but just a gorgeous impression when you get right down to it. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, and the doctor said it dropped right in with no adjustment, so you know what we do is we make sure it fits the model before it leaves the lab, and then whether or not it fits the patient's tooth has everything to do with his temporary or his dental assistant's temporary. So really all we can do is, like I said, make sure it fits the solid model when it leaves the lab, and whether or not it fits in the patient's mouth has more to do with the temporary and whether or not the contacts and occlusion were correct on the temporary than it has to do with anything else. You know, if it doesn't fit in the patient's mouth and then you try it on the solid model and it doesn't fit there, well, obviously we screwed up there and it was our fault. But if it fits the solid model and then doesn't fit the patient in the patient's mouth, then something shifted from the time it was made. It lined up well, of course, no tray impingement anywhere. So that's the good. Now let's look at the bad. I don't know if you recognize those colors. I don't know how many of my clinical videos you've watched, but these Los Angeles Laker colors, the purple and yellow, this is the Glidewell impression material. This is one of my impressions, and it was sitting on the QC person's desk because they were calling me to tell me that there was an issue with my impression. And I said, what's the issue? It's up for an international award. And they said, no, the issue is there's a problem. We've got a pull here. And look at, there's some inclusion of some fluid here. And I was like, oh, snap. Yeah, we got an issue there. We're going to have to take this again. And so we have a problem there. And there's also a problem over here. Things just not looking like they should over there. Things look decent in other places, but still just not like they should. I don't know if you can tell, but this is not a two-chord impression technique. This was an area where I used the diode laser and then tried to use a cord-free retraction paste. I play around with those from time to time because, you know, I still feel that I believe in my heart that there's nothing better than the two-chord impression technique, but I'm always looking for something that's easier because if something ever comes along that does even 90% of what the two-chord technique does in terms of retraction, but is, you know, say, I don't know, 60% easier, that'd be a big step in the right direction. So far, nothing has kind of knocked it off, but that's one of those sneaky ones. You know, you take it out of the mouth and you glance at it real quick, and I don't know, maybe I didn't see it. Maybe I walked out of the room and my assistant didn't see it either, thought I looked at it, but that got caught after they poured it up. They saw it on the stone model. And so I'm calling this the bad impression. The good one's from the other doctor. This is the bad one. Bad on me because I sent that to the laboratory and I got called out on it, and that's embarrassing because I do nothing for the most part but work on technicians, and I had to fall on my sword and say, please, 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 I did not see that. Please believe me that I didn't think that was okay, and they have forgiven me and we've moved on from it. But still, that's the bad. I'm calling myself out. I get the bad award this week for that impression. At least I didn't get the ugly. I'm glad I didn't get the ugly, because here's the ugly for this week. And this is what we got from the doctor. If you've seen me lecture in the last couple of years, we have a doctor who we have christened Tiny Impression Guy. And this is probably his first cousin. And this guy used slightly more material, and by slightly I mean like 15% more material than Tiny Impression Guy. So this guy's slightly larger than Tiny Impression Guy, but not by much. This doesn't even warrant being called Medium Impression Guy. This is still tiny. And the look of what happened over here, all these bubbles over here, it looks like this impression was taken adjacent to molten lava. You know, I've never seen this kind of look before. What would make that bubble like that? But you can see the crown was actually prepped. I mean, there literally is a crown that was prepped in there, and the impression material was squirted around the crown prep, and we do have, you know, a tooth on either side of it. And over on this side, the patient did bite together, so we do have some occlusal registration of the teeth across from it, but there, you know, no tray used. You know, it's kind of a flexible impression. I don't know if the thinking is, boy, the dem trays is expensive. You know, who wants to go to all the expense of doing one of these? Maybe they had to do this on a deserted island or in the back of a car where trays weren't readily available. I don't know what the thinking is when you're doing an $800 crown or a $1,000 crown, or maybe the crown was free and that justified not using a tray. It seems kind of crazy, and obviously when we see something like this, this is kind of where we draw the line. You know, we try to work with every doctor for the most part. We try not to call and critique doctors and say, hey, look, this isn't going to work for us. But this is a difficult one to deal with. We don't have tiny little articulators that are only this big where we can take tiny little models and articulate them and work with them. So this is the ugly impression of the week. And, you know, this is, you wonder, it's hard to believe that a licensed dentist here in the U.S. would send this in. The worst part is, and I didn't see it while I was up there, but we see dentists sometimes who will take impressions for bridges like this, which is arguably a bigger send than this, but this is pretty lazy, and there's really kind of no excuse for this as well. So here's hoping that all your impressions look like this one. Here's hoping that your lab will forgive you if you do what I did and every once in a while send in one of these. And here's hoping that you have a conscience and that you could never be tempted to take and send in one of these.